You've done it before. Canceled plans. Walked away from something. Said no to an opportunity that, on paper, looked exactly like what you've been waiting for. And you told yourself the same thing everyone tells themselves in that moment. Something just felt wrong. And maybe it did. Maybe that feeling saved you. Or maybe, and this is the part nobody wants to say out loud, maybe you just talked yourself out of something that would have changed your life. Here's the truth that psychology is only now catching up to. The feeling that protects you from danger, and the feeling that traps you inside your own fear, are almost identical. Same body sensations. Same urgency. Same voice. Same certainty. One is trying to guide you. The other is trying to cage you. And if you've been confusing them, which most people have, then every major decision you've made in the last 5 years deserves a second look. Stay with me. Because by the end of this video you'll have a tool most people never develop. The ability to tell the difference between wisdom and fear before you act on it. And that difference? It might be the most important psychological skill you ever learn. The battle nobody talks about. Let's start with a scenario that might feel uncomfortably familiar. You get a message. An opportunity you've genuinely been hoping for. A relationship that looks promising. A job offer. An invitation. A door, finally, cracking open. And before excitement can even settle in, something tightens. Not a thought. Not a rational concern. Just a feeling. Heavy, sudden, uninvited. Maybe this isn't right. Something feels off. What if this goes wrong? And now you're frozen. Not because the opportunity is bad, but because you can't figure out if you're being smart or being scared. This is the battle psychology rarely names directly, the one happening inside millions of people every single day. Not between right and wrong. Between anxiety and intuition. And the cruel, frustrating reality is this. Both of them speak the exact same language. Both say slow down. Both say be careful. Both make your chest tight and your stomach drop. Both feel, in the moment, absolutely convincing. Which is exactly why so many intelligent people who read books, go to therapy, know themselves reasonably well, still spend years running from the right things and walking into the wrong ones. Because they never learned to tell the voices apart. Let's change that. Right now. The anxiety machine. To understand anxiety, you have to understand what it was designed for. Not what it does to you now. What it was built to do, thousands of years ago when the threats your ancestors faced were immediate, physical, and very much capable of killing them. Anxiety's job was simple: keep you alive. Not happy. Not fulfilled. Not growing. Alive. And to do that job, your brain developed something called a negativity bias. A default setting that scans for danger before opportunity, threat before reward. In the wild, that bias was a survival advantage. Assume danger first. Check for safety second. The problem? Your nervous system never got the update. It still processes emotional risk, rejection, embarrassment, failure, the end of a relationship, in remarkably similar ways to physical danger. Your body doesn't always distinguish between a predator in the grass and a performance review at work. The fear response looks almost identical. So anxiety steps in, sends the alarm, tells you to stop. And here's the specific quality that makes anxiety so convincing and so dangerous. Anxiety lives entirely in the future. It doesn't respond to what's happening. It responds to what might happen. It's a filmmaker, a storyteller. It takes your worst fears, dresses them in realistic detail, and plays them on a loop inside your head. What if this fails? What if they hurt you? What if you're making the biggest mistake of your life? Your body responds as if those movies are real. Heart rate up. Breathing shallow. Stomach in knots. The full physiological package, for something that hasn't happened and may never happen. That's the genius and the cruelty of anxiety. It makes fiction feel like intelligence. What intuition actually is. Now, intuition. Most people imagine it as something mystical. A sixth sense. An unexplainable knowing. Something either you have or you don't. The reality is both more ordinary and more extraordinary than that. Your brain processes approximately 11 million bits of information per second. Your conscious mind handles about 40 of them. The rest? Your subconscious is working on it. Quietly. Constantly. In the background. It's observing the micro-expressions that flicker across someone's face before their polished smile appears. It's noticing the slight inconsistency between what someone says and how their body responds. It's tracking patterns across hundreds of past experiences, comparing, calculating, predicting. And when it reaches a conclusion, when the data points to something your conscious mind hasn't caught yet, it sends you a signal. Not as a thought, as a feeling. That's intuition, not magic. Pattern recognition operating below the threshold of conscious awareness. And once you understand that, the difference between intuition and anxiety becomes much clearer. Because anxiety is manufacturing data, creating threats from imagination. Intuition is reporting data, responding to something real that your conscious mind simply hasn't processed yet. One is a false alarm. One is a real signal. And here's the single most important distinction between them, the one that, once you feel it, you can never unfeel. Anxiety is loud. Intuition is quiet. Anxiety demands. Intuition informs. Anxiety repeats itself, gets louder when you ignore it, escalates when you don't comply. Intuition arrives, states its case, and then waits, patiently, for you to catch up. The childhood wiring nobody warned you about. Here's where this gets personal for a lot of people. And I want to say this carefully because it matters. Some people struggle to tell anxiety and intuition apart not because they're broken, but because of what they learned in childhood. Picture a child growing up in an unpredictable environment. Not necessarily a dramatic one. Maybe just a house where moods shifted without warning. Where the rules changed depending on the day. Where love sometimes felt conditional and safety sometimes felt uncertain. That child's brain does something remarkable to cope. It becomes a threat detection specialist. It learns to read the room before entering it. To scan faces for signs of danger. To stay perpetually alert because alertness was protective. Because in that house, catching a problem early meant avoiding pain later. And for a while, maybe for years, that hypervigilance worked. But then childhood ends. And the hypervigilant brain doesn't get a memo. It carries the same programming into adulthood. Into relationships. Into careers. Into every new situation that carries even a ghost of past danger. And here is where the wiring causes the most damage. That brain doesn't ask, is this bad? It asks, is this different? Is this unfamiliar? Is this uncertain? Is this unpredictable? And if the answer is yes, the alarm fires. Even if different means better. Even if unfamiliar means healthier. Even if uncertain means growth. This is why people with anxious histories often feel most comfortable in situations that are objectively worse for them, because those situations are familiar. And the nervous system has confused familiarity with safety. It isn't intuition telling them to stay in the difficult relationship, avoid the opportunity, retreat from the dream. It's old fear. Old wiring. Old survival code running on new hardware. And you can't override code you don't know you're running. The relationship trap. Nowhere does this confusion cause more damage than in relationships. I want you to think about this honestly. Have you ever met someone who treated you well, genuinely well, and instead of feeling safe you felt uncomfortable? Almost suspicious? No chaos. No mixed signals. No emotional roller coaster. Just consistency, kindness, clarity. And something in you said, something must be wrong with this person. That's not intuition. That's anxiety running a program it learned a long time ago. That love comes with unpredictability, that chemistry feels like intensity, that peace is suspicious. When chaos becomes familiar, calm feels like a warning sign. And so people leave the healthy relationship. Not because it was wrong, but because it was different. Meanwhile, and this is the painful mirror, people stay in genuinely harmful relationships because the emotional turbulence feels recognizable. The nervous system calls that turbulence love because it matches the pattern it was trained on. This dynamic quietly destroys countless relationships that could have thrived, and sustains countless ones that should have ended. Not because people are weak. Because they never learned to ask, is this my intuition talking, or is this just the voice of everything I survived before? When anxiety disguises itself as wisdom. Let's talk about the version of this that's hardest to admit. Because sometimes anxiety doesn't disguise itself as a feeling. It disguises itself as logic. You don't just feel afraid, you build a case. A thorough, convincing, reasonable-sounding case for why this is a bad idea. The timing isn't right. You need more experience first. The risk is too high. You should wait until you're more ready. Sound familiar? Psychology has a name for this. Intellectualized avoidance. Using rational-sounding arguments to justify fear-based decisions. Dressing anxiety in the suit of wisdom so it can walk through your defenses unchallenged. It's the most sophisticated trick your nervous system plays on you. Because you can argue against a feeling. It's much harder to argue against a conclusion. Here's the test. Ask yourself, has the reasoning changed? Last month it was bad timing. The month before, wrong circumstances. Before that, not enough preparation. But the destination, moving forward, taking the risk, trying the thing, has remained consistently terrifying across every version of the logic. If the reasons change but the avoidance stays constant, it's not logic. It's fear. In a very expensive disguise. The tool that separates them. So how do you actually tell them apart in real time, in the moment when it matters? Here's the most powerful question I've found. If I removed fear completely from this situation, not the outcome, not the risk, just the fear, what would I know? Not what would you do? What would you know? Sit with that. Because underneath anxiety's noise, there is almost always a quieter signal. An answer that doesn't need to justify itself every 5 minutes. An answer that stays the same whether you're tired or rested, scared or calm. Use this as your compass. Anxiety changes. It shifts with your mood, your sleep, your stress level, your last conversation. It's louder at 2 a.m. Quieter after a good workout. It feeds on your attention and grows bigger the more you engage with it. Intuition is stable. It says the same thing on Monday that it says on Friday. It doesn't need you to be afraid to make its point. It doesn't escalate. It doesn't beg. And there's one more sign, arguably the most telling of all. After anxiety runs through you, you feel exhausted, depleted, wrung out. The mental noise, the circular thinking, the worst-case scenarios, they cost something. After genuine intuition speaks, you feel something different. Clear. Not necessarily happy. Not necessarily comfortable. Sometimes the intuitive message is difficult. This relationship needs to end, this path isn't yours, this decision was wrong. But beneath the difficulty, there's a stillness. A groundedness that anxiety never provides. Because intuition isn't trying to control you. It's trying to show you something. Conclusion. Here's what I want you to walk away with. Not a perfect system. Not a foolproof formula. Because the truth is, this takes practice. It takes willingness to be wrong about yourself, which is harder than it sounds. But here's the reframe that changes everything. The goal isn't to silence anxiety. Anxiety exists for a reason. It has kept you and everyone you've ever loved alive. The goal is to stop letting anxiety impersonate wisdom. To stop mistaking its urgency for truth. To stop treating every uncomfortable feeling as a warning sign and every warning sign as a command. Because somewhere in the last few years of your life, maybe more, there was a moment when fear sounded so much like instinct that you listened to it. And something didn't happen that might have. A conversation you didn't start. A risk you didn't take. A door you didn't walk through. Not because it was wrong. Because it was uncertain. And uncertainty felt like danger. That's the real cost of confusing these two voices. Not one bad decision, but a pattern of retreat. A life that slowly, quietly shrinks to the size of what feels safe. The next time a feeling rises up, the next time your mind says stop, your chest tightens, your stomach drops. Pause before you obey it. Ask the question. If fear wasn't here right now, what would I know? And then listen. Not for the loudest voice. For the quietest one. Because fear screams to keep you small. Wisdom whispers to set you free. And your entire future may be waiting on the other side of learning which one is which.